everybody. Let me get over here where I can talk to you. Thank you for joining me and Noah. This is Noah, by the way. Noah, look. Hi, Noah. This is little Noah. He's the baby in the family, and you've heard me mention him, I think. Ow. He's playing. And he is playing with our project. And our project is moss. Look at all this wonderful moss. Look at that. Okay, so... Sorry, I got excited. He's really excited. He's chewing on it and using it as a big cushion. I have my entire kitchen table covered with moss right now. Isn't that great? And it's only a tiny bit of what we're going to be playing with today. Now, you might wonder why I'm playing with moss at all, and that's because we're going to propagate it. I've been propagating moss for quite a while, and it's something I always do. I always like to have some on hand for a lot of different things. And I'm going to, for some of our upcoming projects, need a tremendous amount of moss. So I've basically been harvesting it and gathering it and getting it to grow and spread. And I'm going to tell you how to do that too, because it is one of the easiest things you could possibly imagine doing. I mean, there's really not much easier in this world. There really isn't. And I hope Noah stays with us the whole way through this video because he's fun. Isn't he a cutie? Hi, sweetheart. I didn't know I'm doing. I know. So anyway, look at that little face. Is he cute? He is just so much fun. He helps me with everything. And he's so much fun. What? Were you getting excited? Oh my goodness. Okay, so we know why he's excited about the moss. It's a toy for him. Why are we excited about moss? Well, I don't even know that, oh no. I don't even know that you are, but I am, and I'm going to tell you why. Moss to me is just interesting. I've never met a moss I don't like. You've got your land mosses and your aquatic mosses and the mosses that hang from trees, and to me they're all great. A moss is basically a plant without any true root system. So, mosses are air plants. And they're interesting for that, but they're interesting for a lot of other reasons too. For example, being that most mosses, all mosses that I know of, really like growing in shady areas, they provide something green, something that can grow in these shaded areas where sometimes you might have a hard time thinking of what you could plant there to green up the space. But it's more than just that as well. The mosses, being plants, they help to clean toxins out of the environment and things like that, which is always nice. Greening up an area, always nice. In addition to which, let's say you have a structure you've built in your garden, be it a garden wall or a small shed or something like that. When you first build it, it doesn't really fit in. It stops the eye as you're looking through the garden because it stops at that structure, that new sharp edge structure. Well, if you put a little bit of moss there on it, you can soften those harsh edges and your eye will continue to flow as opposed to being stopped right at that thing. So visually it's appealing. And it also happens to give whatever structure you've decorated with, oh dear, whatever structure, whatever structure you've decorated with the moss now looks aged and like it's been there for a while and like it's meant to be a part of everything as opposed to being something that just has been plopped down in the middle of things. And if you put that hurt. If you put moss, say, on rocks around a pond, it gives additional places for little critters to hide and play and hang out, in addition to making the pond look more established and just more pretty and rich. And moss also can function as a mulch. You can use that around your plants, both indoors and out, in fact. Outdoors, you can use it around your plants in your shaded areas and things like that. And it'll act as a mulch, helping to suppress weeds. Here, honey, don't hurt mommy anymore. Helping to suppress weeds and... oh, that's yours now. helping to suppress weeds and to keep moisture in. And if you put it around your house plants in the pots, again, it will help keep the moisture in and you won't have to water as often. Now, those are just some of the reasons that I like moss. And I could go on about all the different reasons. In an aquarium, for example, the aquatic mosses give fish fry, places to hang out, and hello, hide. Are you back? Do you want more? And places to hide and hang out. And if you have shrimp, they'll kind of hang out in the moss and live amongst the mosses, eat algae off the moss, things like that. And the moss will help to clean and oxygenate the tank. So moss, great in every way. Now, how to harvest it is something you might not be aware of. You can basically harvest moss anywhere that you find it. All of this and much more, many table loads more, all came from the north side of my property where moss grows abundantly and grows very fast. So my little Cameron and Easton helped me to harvest it, and we got quite a haul, which is great because that's what I wanted. And so thank you guys, I appreciate it. And hi. And the reason that it grows so I can't even talk. There's so much going on here. My house is always so chaotic, just me and the critters, but the critters keep it interesting and they distract me, so I'm sorry. But those of you who are with me a lot, you know this happens. I get distracted by the babies. But the reason that the moss tends to grow so well on the north side of my house and on the north side of most structures where you find it is because of what moss likes the most, what makes ideal conditions. Moss tends to like things shadier, and since the sun passes through the southern half of the sky, it throws shade, not throws shade in the sense of but throws actual shade on the north side of the structures. So moss will tend to grow better there. It likes shade, it likes slightly acidic things, and with acid rain and things, moss grows a lot better now than it used to because there's always a certain amount of acidity, so that's good for the moss. And it likes the damp conditions. And obviously if it's on the north or shady side of a building, things are going to stay more damp there as well because the sun's not beating down, drying it out. So it has everything it needs. That's why you tend to find it growing more prolifically on the north side of things. Now, when I was growing up, I remember we were told all the time, hey, if you're ever lost in the woods, you can find your way out just by following, where he's so excited, just by following the way moss grows, because moss only grows on the north side of trees. Well, I don't remember well enough to be able to say for sure whether that was true when I was a child, but it's not true anymore. Yeah, it will grow a lot of times more prolifically on the north side, or in some places maybe it does only grow on the north side, but you cannot count on that as a set rule because, in the woods, things tend to be shady everywhere, so it has that it needs. The canopy holds in moisture, so it has that it needs. And as I mentioned before, our rain is more acidic now than it used to be. Well, that means that it has the acidic conditions and the rain and it has everything it needs, and a lot of times it'll grow on every side of the trees. So you cannot necessarily count on that, but, excuse me, sometimes yes, but not 100% of the time. And I just wanted to make you aware of that. Now, if you're going to harvest it from an area, make sure you pick some place where there's a lot of it. Don't go out and take every bit of moss out of a place out in the outdoors, because remember, that moss forms a part of that ecosystem, and if you take it all, you've done damage to that ecosystem. Now, the argument can be made that taking any damages the ecosystem, but the thing is, if you find a place that has a lot of moss growing and you take a little bit of it, it's really not going to harm anything. So that's what I do when I'm out in the woods. And what you want to do is you want to take moss from the center of the patch that you found. And the reason for that is that, oh gosh, allergies, cats, ducks, everybody's going crazy. But the reason you want to take it out of the middle is that the moss will grow to fill in that little circular area you've taken out of the center a lot more quickly than it'll take and grow outward at the edges. So when you're taking it, harvest it from the center of your grouping and make sure to leave quite a bit and you'll be fine. Okay, so you've done that and you get your moss home like we have it here. A lot less than we did when we started a few minutes ago. There he is. So you get it home, and now I'm going to tell you how you can propagate it. And like I said, it's the easiest thing ever. And I did check out a couple of people's videos, not a lot, just a couple, on YouTube to see what they said about propagating moss. And both of the videos I checked out talked about how to do a substrate and things like that. You don't need a lot of soil. Well, the fact is, like we said, they don't really have a true root system. They don't need any soil. So while the two videos I checked out were simple, were easy, I think they overcomplicated things. I propagate moss all the time. This is something I do, and I don't use substrate at all. Because think about it. When you're out and about, you see moss growing directly on the surface of stones, correct? Right on a rock, moss will grow. It doesn't have roots. It gets what it needs from the air. So you don't need to put down dirt. You don't need to put down anything. You can just save the moss. But you've brought it in the house, and it's got not only probably dirt on the back of it, like this. See how dirty that is? In that dirt, in this, there might be little critters that you don't want to have in your house. So what you want to do is when you bring it in, have a container like I have here of non-chlorinated water. Drop your moss in it. And you don't have to be real gentle with it. This is me. What I'm doing is I am just loosening that dirt up and washing it off. And that's Noah's side you're looking at. And I just wash it off. Now there's still going to be dirt on it, but I've gotten the bulk of it off. And as you're doing this, you can also pick out any weeds that were growing in your moss. Pick those out, because otherwise you're going to be propagating them. And if they're weeds, in other words, plants you don't want, you just want your moss. And if you're wondering why I'm just tossing that, the ducks are over there and they'll eat that. I'm not just throwing things around my house. So you've washed off the back. Now all you need to do is put it somewhere where it's going to get what it... Noah, come over here. Okay, we're experiencing technical difficulties. All right, here I have an enormous tote. It's an enormous underbed tote. And I'm not going to put it where you can see it because that'll just add to the chaos we already have going on here. My babies like to help us. They really do. Okay, so I have this giant tote here. All I do is once I rinse the moss, and the reason I use the underbed totes is because they're shallow. I only want to put this moss in a single layer. And I just rinse it, set it in the tote. That's it. That's all I need to do, because now that moss is moist and it'll grow without additional acidity as well. I just set it in the tote in a single layer, and and I leave some space in between the mosses, because if I just wanted to save the moss, all I'd need to do is put it in the tote and put it in a single layer without any space in between. But I'm leaving space in between my little bits of moss so that it has room to expand, and it will. It'll expand and it'll fill those spaces, and then I can take it out, use it for other things, spread it around, put it in other containers, whatever it is I want to do. Propagate it even more, divide it up, and once it's lost, used up all of its excess space in there, divide it up and put it into several different totes to allow it to expand and grow even more. And I'm propagating moss. Now, you put it in an area where it gets some sunlight. Remember, it is a plant, so it needs a little bit of light, but shade. Don't put it in complete darkness in a closed closet, but put it somewhere where it doesn't get a whole lot of light. And so you've got it in your tote, and you can actually close the tote. You don't need to put holes in it or anything like that. Just put your moss in the bottom of it, having already washed it, which dampened it, and put it someplace where it doesn't get a lot of light and it has everything it needs. Now, if I notice my moss isn't looking, once it's, recovered from me playing with it and it's gotten all nice and green and lush, which it'll do without you bothering it, by the way. If you have it in a closed container like that, I don't even really need to spritz it with water that often. But if you have it in an open container, or if you notice it's getting a little bit dry or whatever, all you need to do is spritz it with unchlorinated water. And I find that if my mosses are getting everything else they need, my land mosses, and they're turning a little yellowish, I just add a little bit of acidity to their environment. And the way I do that is that I have a spritzer bottle in which I have a 50-50 solution of water and white vinegar that I use for cleaning. I just spritz it a little bit in there to add to the acidity. And I only do that if I notice that the moss just looks like it needs a little oomph. Other than that, I've gone months and months without even opening a tote. If it's in a tote and it's closed, I've gone ages without even looking at it, and it's fine. You're better off to look at it, make sure it's getting everything you need, but as you guys are aware, sometimes I go through periods where I just lose track of things. So, in those cases, it's been left go, and it's totally and completely fine. But keep a spritzer bottle handy with just plain water, non-chlorinated. Spritz it when it's looking dry. If it has enough moisture, you don't want it floating in water, by the way, unless it's aquatic moss. The land mosses don't have it floating in water, but keep it someplace humid and damp and shady, and it'll do well. It'll grow. You just rinse, place, and done. That's your propagation. And you can also, you don't need to put it in totes. You don't even need to put it in a container. I used the last batch I cleaned to surround the palm, that if you watched my last video, Fun Climate Help Idea, there was a palm tree behind me, and it was sitting in the project area behind me because I was getting ready to transplant it. Once I did, I noticed all this bare ground around. I already had the moss sitting nearby so that I could do this video with you. And so basically I took that whole batch of moss to surround this palm, and that was kind of neat. And so that was a good time. And now Noah and I are going to get this moss cleaned up and put in totes. And the only reason I clean it up again is to avoid bringing pathogens into the house. Plus, I find that if you leave a lot of dirt caked on the bottom and then you just put the plant into a tote, at that point that dirt might cause the bottom of the moss to rot. So it is better to rinse it out. Plus, that gives it the moisture it's going to need once you put it into its place. And if you don't have any totes, I don't want you to go out and buy one. I don't want you to think you need to. Like I said, this is the easiest thing you could ever do. I have some aquariums in the other room that right now are just being used to grow aquatic plants. Well, I can put those in, combine them. Hi. I can combine those in other aquariums, put them in aquariums where the fish can make use of them. And then I've got a few aquariums that are free. I'll just empty the water out of them and line the bottom of those with moss as well, because the nice hide sides also help to hold in moisture, and I don't have to spritz them that often. I have a lot of other containers sitting around, and trust me, I have quite a haul of moss. We're going to be filling everything I can find with moss. The only thing you got to remember is single layer, because you don't want to crush it. You want it to be able to grow. That's it. And you can rip it into tiny pieces, and each piece you rip into will spread and grow into more moss. So I know that was a lot longer video than it had to be able to talk about this, but I'm blaming the baby because he left now and can't defend himself. And so anyway, thanks for joining us for this crazy video. And I hope you enjoyed it. And I hope you go off and you do harvest and propagate some of your own moss. If you have any ideas for other things that can be used for, I do know, excuse me, there's a growing method that incorporates moss in it that I am going to be sharing with you at some point. Probably not today, but that's also going to be something that is used in a lot of my upcoming projects. So we'll be using that particular gardening method a lot, and I know I'll be sharing it with you. So that's something you have coming up to look forward to. And the moss that we're growing is going to be used in some of the projects I mentioned in my upcoming projects video that I recently did, and as well as being used for myriad other things, because moss is really one of the most versatile things you can get. You can even say make a wood frame bench or something outside and cover it in moss, and people can, in a shady area, and people can sit on that, and it's very cushiony and soft and wonderful. It will hold in moisture, so keep that in mind. It'll rot your bench eventually, and it'll get people's butts a little bit wet, but you win some, you lose some. All right, I better go before the baby totally trashes the whole house. I'm going to go play with him and help him expend some of this excess energy. You guys have a great afternoon, and I'll see you the next time here at Home with Melissa. Thanks again. Bye-bye.